Mandy. We're back again. Can you hear me? Hello? Well, anyway, guys, welcome to another episode of Behind the Fiends, Fiend Zone Video, Behind the Counter. It's Sunday, the Sabbath, and for those of you that are not in church and being naughty, well, I guess that would only be here in Hawaii. I guess everywhere else in the world is probably already out of church. Well, today we got Last House on the Left star, Marc Sheffler, on the show. Now, Marc Sheffler played the part of Junior Stillo in that infamous movie, but not only that, but Marc is an accomplished comedian, writer, producer. He wears many hats. I mean, he's done everything from Sanford and Son, Charles in Charge, Harry and the Hendersons, Love Boat. He was a regular at the Comedy Store with Robin Williams, Mark Summers, Jay Leno, Michael Keaton, list goes on and on. So, can you hear me now, Mandy?
A little bit. I'm not sure what's going on. Can you hear me fine? Am I fine?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Can you see me just fine? You said I looked like Max Headroom before. That's kind of like a...
Well, you're moving fine. Before, it was like a just frame drop. It was like you were going, Well, anyway.
I have no idea what's going on. That shows a weak signal for me.
Well, without any further ado, though, we will bring in the master of the Marc Sheffler Pyramid of Success, Mr. Marc Sheffler. How you doing, Marc?
I'm fine. That was great. Pyramid of Success. I like it. I'm going to use that. I'll give you credit for it, but I'm going to use it.
Well, you might want to explain to folks about, well, your story starts at LSU University, correct?
Well, it actually starts when I was 10. I mean, my show business story?
Yeah, I guess. But we can go back to when you were 10, when you were little Sheffler.
Okay. So when my father was an aluminum siding salesman, and he was a classic out of the box parent, right? He was a single parent with me for a while before he remarried, and he was this silk mohair suit, Cadillac driving, cigar smoking, like World War II veteran, was an Army Ranger, taught people how to beat the shit out of people. I mean, he was just this multifaceted character, but mostly he was this siding salesman, this guy who could fucking sell ice to an Eskimo. So he came up to me in the run up to my birthday, and he said, you're going to be 10, double digits. It's a big deal. You're around for a decade already. Let's do something special for your birthday. What do you want? So me being a child of my time, I said, how about the Three Stooges? And he got them for me. He see that picture behind me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's me and the Stooges at my 10th birthday party. They were performing at a nightclub in Pittsburgh called the Holiday House. So my father made a deal with them to do a Saturday afternoon matinee that I could invite, as many people as I wanted, my friends and their families. So as I recall, there may be like 60, 70 people there in this big nightclub, and he paid the Stooges and they did their show. So about halfway through the show, Mo looks at the audience and says, we're here to celebrate Marc's birthday. Where is Marc? So I raised my hand, and he said, Marc, stand up. So, I stood up. He said, come on up on stage with us. And I had this tingle, right? This fucking, like tingle. It's the same feeling that you get post-puberty if you're a guy and you see a girl who really attracts you. It's that same kind of tingle. So I went up on stage, and I knew all of their material. Like, I knew everything they were doing. I'd seen like almost every short, or probably by that time every short they ever made. So I started to I interacted with them. I wove myself into what they were doing. And at one point, Mo stopped and puts his hand on my head, and he says, I dub you the fourth stooge, right? The fourth stooge. Well, the people, my friends and their family, everybody applauded, and I couldn't see shit, right? I couldn't, like, lights were in my eyes, and I'm on this nightclub stage, and like I have a microphone in my hand, and it kind of all congealed for me. This laughter and applause, and I say things, and they laugh, and I felt this hug, man, this warm kind of comforter, this down comforter. It just got wrapped around me, and I think looking back, that's the moment I said, yeah, I want more of this shit. This is it. This is what I want. I didn't intellectualize it because I was 10, but looking on the path that I took from that point forward, I think that's the big bang of my own personal Big Bang theory.
So then, like getting the first taste of a drug at the first,
yeah, I didn't want to use like this is what opium is like metaphor, but starts at your toes and it kind of works its way up to your legs and then into your oh, that feels really good. And by the time it gets to your head, you're like, oh, that's really nice. Wow. So, I've never done opium, but I've had morphine because of some car accidents. I know that kind of flow feeling, and that's exactly in minus the drug, the chemical itself. That's, and probably was in chemical inside my brain doing it, but I'll tell you, I remember that as clear as day. That's what it felt like, and I said, yeah, I want more of this. So as the story goes, from that point forward, people in my family tell me that that's all I did was watch things funny on TV and repeat monologues from comedians I'd seen on the Ed Sullivan Show. And so then, yeah, so I grow up and go to college, and I'm in college for a couple of years, and I hate it. It's just, I'm having fun because there are a lot of, women in the South, in Louisiana, that had never seen anyone like me before. So, a lot of them would just like sleep with me out of curiosity. See, she's laughing. She knows that I'm telling you. I know, but one thing I learned in college, I could cook because I had the kind of father I had. I ate in fancy restaurants all the time and learned how to cook mostly everything that I like to eat. So I got to LSU. And here was this guy who didn't look like anybody on, like long hair, bit of a beard growing, crazy, funny, could cook. And when you're a guy in college and you can cook, and there are girls in college who are away from home who long for a home cooked meal, you're like 70% ahead of the game right there. All you have to do is not fuck it up. You just have to get out of your own way, and it's going to happen. And so I did that, and then I got bored with that because it ceased to become anything other than another Friday, Saturday night. And I did a production. I was in the drama department there, and I did a production of How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And I had a second lead, not the lead, but I had enough stage time in front of big audiences that I said, yeah, I'm back. This is what I remember as a kid. I like this. So I decided to quit, and I quit college, went back to Pittsburgh to see my dad, and told him I was going to go to California. And he said, nah, he said, you'll end up in California, but you should go to New York first. And he told me why. He said, look, you'll make your bones, you'll get your legs there, and then go to California. He said, don't go to LA right away. So I followed my dad's advice because he'd always given me good advice. And he gave me a bunch of money, and I went to the Catskill Mountains and got a job, lied my way into the job of stage manager of the Raleigh Hotel's nightclub, 1,500 seat nightclub, a giant fucking nightclub that got A-level comedian talent. So there I was for about a year, seeing every comedian on that circuit multiple times. It was like postgraduate school, man. It was just, I'd sit there every night and watch and learn and, see how they introduced jokes and wrote new jokes, and how, the birth of a joke. I was there. I'll tell you. You want? Can I tell you a joke I heard there?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so it was there that I got to experience something that's pretty interesting in comedy writing, and that's the actual birth of a joke, right? The birth of the joke. Like yesterday, the joke didn't exist. Today, the joke does exist. The night of the moon landing in 1969, I was working at the Raleigh, and a comedian comes on stage, and this is the actual night of the moon landing. It just happened like 2 hours earlier. And a comedian comes on stage, and I want to say it was Freddie Roman, but it might not have been, but Freddie Roman is who I think it was. He comes on stage, and he says hello to the audience. Remember, it's 1,500 people. That's a crowd, right? And he says, ladies and gentlemen, do we live in some country, the United States of America, the first country on the moon? Applause, like the audience goes nuts. And he said, we beat the Russians. We did this, we did that. We're Americans. We went to the moon. Boom, right? Pause. Then he says, on the way to the nightclub tonight from my room, I passed the elevators, and there was an old Jewish man walking around in circles by the elevators, pointing at the sky, saying, tonight's the night. Tonight's the night. I was curious. I didn't know. He kept repeating, tonight's the night. So I went over to him and I said, sir, what do you mean tonight's the night? Why are you doing this? Why are you what's going on? And he looked at me and he said, 50 years ago, I married my Rachel. On our wedding night, we're in our wedding bed, and I say to her, Rachel, we're married. We're going to be together forever. We took vows. Please, my darling, please give the schmeckle a little kiss. And she looked at me and said, Ernie, I'll do that when there's a man on the moon. Tonight's the night. Tonight's the night. And it hit me that joke didn't exist yesterday. I'd never seen anyone do that joke. I'd been there. I'd seen people. I'd never seen anybody do that joke. So I got to experience that stuff. So one of the comedians I met there was a guy named London Lee. And London Lee, you know who London Lee was?
Well, researching you, I found out you had worked for him for quite a while.
Yeah. So I became friends with him, and he had a road manager named Frank Bratman, who I became friends with. And we, every time London was there, it was more than just, with the other comedians, like we maybe eat together, or we'd have a meal. We became like friendly. He liked me, and sometime after, like I'd been at the Raleigh for about a year. London had a show, and he said to me, hey, look, Frank is leaving to go on to a couple of other things that he and I are doing together. The job is open, a road manager. You drive, you do my driving, you run errands for me and for my wife. I'll move you to the city. I'll get you a place. You can have use of the car, and this is what I'll pay you. And I thought to myself, wow, that's pretty good. So I said yes. So I left the Raleigh, and I went to work for London, and I started out doing exactly what he said. I started out driving car and driving him to gigs and running errands and picking up shit and, taking him into the city during the week and just normal shit. And then I started writing some jokes for him that he used on stage that really worked. And so my cachet started to, my value started to rise. So he had a bit that he used to do with the other guy, Frank, in his act, where he would come out and he'd say, halfway through his act, he'd say, I'm a little thirsty. I need some water. And he would turn to the wings and he would say, Frank, bring me some water. Frank would come out and they'd do that. I'll tell you what it is in a sec. So at some point, he said to me, the bit I used to do with Frank? And I said, yeah. He said, let's do that tonight. Let's see how you do with that. So halfway through the act, he turns to the wings and he says, I'm a little thirsty. I need some water. Mark, can you bring me some water? So I walk out with a glass of cold water, and on my cross to him from the wings, he looks at the audience and he said, "This is Mark. My father got him for me," because his whole thing, his father was like, rich, like multi-billionaire rich, right? So that was his act. The audience would laugh at that because, I hand him the water and he would say to me, "Who am I?" And I'd say, "You're the boss." And he said, "Who are you?" I say, "Me? I'm nothing." And he said, "Well, what does that make me?" I said, "Well, it makes you the boss over nothing." And the audience would, it was his joke, right? And I did it fine. So we did that a few months. And one night we're at a club, I think it was the Nevele in the mountains, Catskill Mountain Resort, and 1,200 seat nightclub, I think. And we do the bit, and get the laugh, and I'm turning to walk off, and he said to me, "Hey, stay here a second." And I walked. I said, "What?" He said, "I'm a little tired. I think I might be coming down with something. I need a rest. You want to do 5 minutes?" It was like, what? Like, whoa, yes, sure, absolutely. Hands me the mic, tells the audience who I am, that I work for him, and that I'm a young comedian. Really sets it up nicely, actually. And I go and I do 5 minutes easily, and it's working really well. And I hear him from behind me go, "All right, get the fuck off the stage," So I hand him back the mic, and he finishes the show. And on the way back, he said to me, "We're not going to do this all the time." And I thought to myself, it's like a guy wanting to get laid, loses virginity. And the girl said, "Well, I'm not going to do it." "Hey, it's okay. I just want to do it once, right? It's okay. I just want to get it over with. One time is good enough, right? For right now." So we ended up doing it several more times. And then the last thing I did with London was 2 weeks at the Copacabana. He co-headlined with a singer by the name of Jackie DeShannon. And I ended up doing it a couple of times there, which was pretty trippy to be on, 19 years old and in a tuxedo on stage at the Copa holding that microphone, So then from there, what happened was I got a manager, Lloyd Greenfield and Associates, and the person who handled me in particular, who was the absolute best of best managers for me, a guy named Dick Towers, who ended up being in Last House on the Left also. And he was just the best. He just, he was just a good guy. He didn't just manage. He was like involved in your life. And, he's just a sweetheart. I'm still friends with his daughter today. And he used to come out and visit me. A great fellow, and a big just a Broadway guy, just a New York guy. And I walked into his office one day and he said, "Mark, I have an audition for you. It's a film, motion picture." I said, "Okay." He said, "Go down to this address on 50-something street between 5th and 6th. Ask for 2 guys. One of them's name is Wes and the other one's name is Sean. Tell them I sent you. You're the fellow I'm sending. And you'll audition." That's how he was. That's how he talked, right? So I go down there and I see a guy named Wes and a guy named Sean. Wes was this tall, skinny, stringy-haired blonde guy, and Sean was this short, little mustache guy, shirt, tails hanging out, kind of sloppy looking. And I read the scene, and they thanked me. I went back up to Dick's office, and before I got into the doorway, they had already called and said, "That's the guy we want for Junior." And the rest is what it is.
Now, for those that don't know, of course, I would hope Wes Craven and Sean S. Cunningham.
Yeah, that was Wes Craven and Sean Cunningham. Yeah,
and Sean S. Cunningham was the one that did Friday the 13th. And was he just coming out of being a porn director at that time? I want to say.
What?
No, Sean Cunningham.
No, Sean wasn't directing. Sean had produced one, to my knowledge. He had produced one pseudo documentary called Together, which was this kind of totally bullshit sex education, kind of a jokey Kinsey report thing. And his father played the doctor. Yeah. So no, it was, and it was Peter. He and Peter Locke, I think, produced that, and Wes was the editor. Wes edited it. So that was Wes's connection to that film.
And it's funny, they both went on to create two of the biggest slasher villains in horror history.
Yeah, and they're both like very mellow guys. Wes especially was. Sean had his moments, but he's still a good guy.
Yeah, we had Nancy Ritter on about a month ago, and she played in Scream, when the original, when Wes did that one. And she talked about how she just sat under the learning tree with Wes and how he was just the most warm, genuine father figure type person you could have ever met. It wasn't a mean bone in his body, no ego, anything.
No, he was, remember that when he did Last House, he wasn't Wes Craven. He was a guy named Wes who had gotten $93,000 from a film distributing company up in Boston to make a shitbag little slasher movie. So he wasn't Wes Craven then. And I have to remind people of that. He was by name, obviously, Wes Craven, but he had not. This was the thing that began to make him Wes Craven. But he had an innate sense of storytelling, film storytelling. Right, if you notice the way Last House is shot, it's shot very simply. It's just mostly, like wide masters and loose close-ups, except the only tight shots are the punctuation shots, the punchline shots. Shot very, because we didn't have, we were on a 20-day schedule, so it was a kind of guerrilla filmmaking at its most interesting.
Yeah, hell, I went back and was watching it the other day so I would know, because it'd been a while since I'd watched it. And I was like, holy shit, there's a Sensei Kreese from freaking Karate Kid in this.
Oh, Marty, yeah.
Marty Cove. I was like,
Marty and I have been friends since Last House. That we're pals and still see each other. And yeah, just, it's weird. When I first got to LA, the day I moved here, the actual move, I'd been a couple of times. But I sold the first script that I ever wrote, so that's what got me here. So the day I landed, I have a bunch of writer friends who their nickname for me is the Myth, because the way my career happened is the way it happens, like in a myth, right? The day I landed in LA, I had an apartment, a car, an agent, William Morris, and I had sold a script, a movie of the week script to NBC. So I landed the day those wheels touched the ground. That's how set up I was, right? So I didn't go through that. I'm going to go to LA. My father was fucking right. If I hadn't listened to my father, none of that shit would have happened the way it happened. I listened to him, and he was 100%, 150% right. So that's the thing. So anyway, I was talking about Marty. I had been here in like 2 or 3 days, and he called me up and he said, I'm going to take you on a tour of every place you need to know. So Marty shows up at my apartment in a Mercedes, an old Mercedes, well, it was kind of a new Mercedes then, like 450 SEL convertible. And we get in the car, and he drove me around to every studio and network's office. I went the whole day. That's all we did. He said, this is MGM in Culver City. Then we go to Universal. Then we go to Fox. And he drove me around to every studio. He said, you're going to need to know where these places are. And that was one of the greatest days ever that I had. And we had lunch. He's just a terrific guy, Cove. He's just he's the opposite of John Kreese. In real life, that's acting. Because Martin Cove in real life is the mathematical opposite of that character.
But they always say the nice guys always are the ones that play the best villains. And
Marty doesn't have a shitty bone. I've known Marty was living with David Hess, who played Krug in Last House. So Marty was living with David's sister, Judy. That's how David got the part. Sean and Wes couldn't find a Krug that they liked. They couldn't find anybody who like was that character in their heads. And David was a very successful songwriter, but he was also this brutal rugby player. So Marty suggested him, and they got David the audition. David went in there and just like destroyed Sean and Wes in the audition and got the job, and obviously got the job.
Yeah, I mean Martin Cove. I am so happy that they've done this Cobra Kai series because I've always felt he deserved way more out of that. When, before the Cobra Kai, I was like, man, he deserves so much more because he was the catalyst for everything that
Oh
happened in
yeah,
the Karate Kid series.
I knew Pat Morita too. I worked with Pat. I knew Pat. I used
Yeah,
to
and
hang.
everybody, it blows me away when you hear him do stand up, and it's like that he doesn't sound like Mr.
Yeah,
Miyagi.
he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't. Pat used to have a really cool little house on Montana Street in Santa Monica, and I used to go over there and smoke pot with him. He was a fucking great guy.
Oh
He's
yeah, he's like God here in Hawaii when you mention Pat Morita over here because I guess he did
I
all.
am again one of those things that I am grateful for the hangout time I had with him.
So you get to LA, is that when you kind of get hooked up at the we'll stay on Last House on the Left. From what I gathered, essentially you all weren't down for the script at first, right? It was a little too
No,
brutal.
no, there was a script that preceded the one that we ended up using. That was kind of like the story of what Wes had, but it was just mindless, gratuitous sex and violence, right? And there's nothing wrong with that to portray that, but it has to be like it has to be tied to something, because it is an aspect of the human existence. But when it's tied to something, it's understandable, and you can maybe cure it if you understand it. So we said, look, we all want to do this, but we need a different take on the script. And Wes and Sean are no dummies. They knew it too, right? So Wes went to work and generated what we had, which became the blueprint for. So some stuff was ad libbed and improvised. The frog scene with me and Jeremy in the bathroom, that was semi-scripted and mostly improvised. And we did it a few times, kind of like the way Larry David does Curb Your Enthusiasm. They know what they're going to do, and then they just ad lib a scene and cut it to time. So so that's what happened.
Yeah, because from what everything I researched on it, I mean, people watch it now and they're like, "Oh, well, it doesn't look that bad," but they don't realize for 1972 that movie shocked a lot of people. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
there was so much implied like murder, the R word. I can't say it on YouTube because they get kind of shitty about it, but there was so much of that to it. It was just a brutal savagery about it.
Well, I've had differing takes on the film, right? The first one I had was what you just said. David Heston, Freddie Lincoln, and I went to a screening of an answer print at a Filmways lab about a month before it was going to be released. They had a cast and crew screening, and we all walked out of the film and said, it's great meeting you guys. We're all going to be friends forever. We know that, but no one's ever going to come to see this piece of shit. It's just fucking awful. And that's what happened. It was made to be on a double feature in drive-ins for Hallmark Releasing's theaters that they had up in the New England area. And then, I don't know, maybe like I have to check the actual time, a couple of months after it was released, Roger Ebert writes a 3.5 out of 4-star review of Last House. And I'm telling you something, as sure as I'm sitting here, literally overnight, things changed. Like Hess and I went out drinking or something on one night and having fun. We wake up the next morning and there are one sheets of Last House in every fucking subway, like everything. Like we didn't know what was going on. We talked to Sean, who was scrambling because he just got an order for like 1,200 prints or something. And those were the days where you actually had to manufacture the prints, right? You had to actually print them. And it was all because Roger Ebert wrote that review. And all of a sudden we were no longer we got pulled from the drive-ins, and we were in every mainstream movie house in the United States.
Yeah, and
So
people don't realize the movie reviewer back in the 70s and 80s, if you didn't grow up in that time period, those that watched this, they were like God. What
yeah,
they said was what sold a movie. I mean, Roger Ebert could be like, well, this movie's shit, and that movie would do nothing.
right.
And like what he did with you all, it was like, God goes, go see this. And the thing that got me with Ebert, it surprised me when I was doing the research that he did the 3.5 stars, because I was like, he notoriously hated horror. He
Did you read the
always,
review?
yeah, and it was
Yes.
like everything
Yeah.
he always shit on horror movies, especially slashers.
Yes. But you see, so I was telling you that I've had an ongoing morphing relationship with it. I would read Ebert's review periodically through the years, sometimes to revisit my own past. Sometimes I was curious as to why this really knowledgeable film critic would do this. And then maybe like 10 years ago, I read it. And then I figured out what the film was really about, or what I think it's about. It's about class warfare. It is a tale of class warfare, a skirmish in class warfare. And I realized that once when I was rewatching it, and I watched the dinner scene and how Wes shot that. And he shot it, we shot it the way we shot it, I know, because of time and budget constraints. But the way it came out was, like that Mervyn Leroy thing with the light at the end of, I forget that movie with Paul Muni or something. It was, the light bulb broke, but it looked so dramatic, that they kept it. Wes shot it all in blacks, right? The only thing you saw were the people and some of the food. And that's the scene where I realized what the movie was about. That's the scene that defines the class warfareness of it. And then now I have a lot more respect for it.
It's funny how the 70s produced two infamous dinner scenes, Last House on the Left and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mandy, you got any questions for Mark?
No, I was just he's kind of gone over everything. It's like he's like a big encyclopedia of information, and it's like I love it. Just letting him talk. I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest flaws, is that I'm my own favorite subject. So
Nothing wrong with that, because
like there's like so many things. There are so many things I had questions about, but he kind of went through everything. It's great.
Yeah, I'm actually writing a book about a 7-year period in my life called Those 7 Years. That starts when my dad and I I'll tell you the beginning of it. When I was 14, my dad and I were in a theater in downtown Pittsburgh watching Jerry Lewis in The Nutty Professor.
Mm-hmm.
And my father's cousin was the general manager of all the Stanley Warner theaters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, kind of tri-state area. So we used to go to any place that was one of his theaters, we'd go. But his office was actually in the Stanley, in the theater. We were in this beautiful, ornate, kind of old East Coast downtown theater, balconies and shit. So big stage. So
they still have one in Huntington, West Virginia that they refurbished, in that movie We Are Marshall with Matthew McConaughey. That's where they did the premiere of it at.
Yeah, they're just gorgeous. Most of them were actually live performance houses that they converted into motion picture theaters. So we're walking out of the theater, and I said to my dad something like, Jerry Lewis is really like the funniest guy in the planet. My dad said, yeah. And I said to my dad, what must that be like? What kind of job? How amazing would that be to be like in the movies? So my father, again, this out of the box aluminum siding salesman guy, looks at me and he said, well, maybe you'll find out someday. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, son, somebody does it every day of the week. Why not you? And I didn't have an answer. I said, yeah, why not me? So he and I made a bargain, a deal, a pinky swear thing. And I said, okay, I promise you that one of these days I'm going to star in a movie that's going to be up on that screen. And my father said, and when that day happens, you and I will come here together in the limousine. And we shook on it. thinking nothing of it. Went and had a sandwich, right? Well, fucking lo and behold, 7 years later, after Roger Ebert's review, the film goes completely wide and high level wide, and I get a call from Sean saying that the publicity people want to send me to Pittsburgh to attend the premiere of the movie. So I said, great. He said, yeah, you'll get some local TV. They'll do some press coverage. It'll be fun. And, you see your family and yada, yada, yada. And I just said to him, where's it opening in Pittsburgh? And he said, hang on. It's opening at a theater called the Stanley. You know it? And I said, yes, I do. So I'm writing a book, and that's what happened. They had a huge premiere with Klieg lights and local press and a bunch of shit. And it was packed, and my father and I rode together in a limo. So I'm writing a book called Those 7 Years that begins at the promise and the deal and ends with, and it's the whole journey of what I went through to get to that point.
So you had an awesome dad. He didn't stifle your creativity. He actually pushed you towards it.
Listen, my dad used to come out here after I got started, right? After my TV writing career kind of took off, and my comedy career out here my dad used to come out and visit me. So he met a lot of my friends and he loved hanging out at the Improv and the Comedy Store and just fucking loved it. So one of the people he met was Robin Williams. And he met Robin pre-Mork and then knew him after Mork. So he knew Robin before Mork and Mindy, awesome. And then afterwards. So like shortly after Mork premiered, my dad was out here visiting, and he and I were standing on Melrose Avenue right outside of the Improv, just getting some air. And I looked up eastward towards the Crescent Heights part, and I saw Robin walk, because we used to park over there in the Fred Siegel parking lot. Robin walking down Melrose towards the Improv, and he's got something under his arm. So gets close, and I see it's a magazine rolled up under his arm. So he sees my father, and he knee jerks into that Shakespearean stuff that he used to do. Ah, Lord Sheffler from the East. What news do you bring, sir?
Yeah. I want to call him that from now on, Lord Sheffler.
Lord Sheffler, what news do you bring, sire? What news? How's the battle going? And my dad was just like tears in his eyes, laughing, and Robin was just having fun with my dad. And then, so my dad says, hey, Robin, what do you got under your arm? So Robin pulls out, and it's a rolled up People magazine of the first one that he was ever on as Mork, right? It was like the biggest thing in comedy. So my dad's, and Robin says, yeah, they just came out. I was at the newsstand and picked one up because I just wanted to get like one of the first ones. My father said to Robin, he said, I'm going right now to the newsstand to get it. And Robin said to him, Mr. Sheffler, there's no reason for you to do that. Take mine. And Robin pulls out a pen and he signs it to my dad and he hands it to him. And my brother Michael still has that People magazine that Robin gave him. So that's the kind of guy Robin was. That's who he was.
Yeah, Robin Williams was our Bob Hope when I was still in the military and I would go to Iraq. He came to Iraq all the time to see us. And he would just go out of his way. He would come in our DFAC and sit down and eat with us.
Sure.
Everything. And
yeah. He was a legitimately decent guy. I mean, there was nothing pretentious about him. There was nothing.
No ego. He was still just Robin Williams. I mean, it was just a regular dude.
We weren't like best pals, right? I don't want to give the impression that we were like best friends, but we got to know each other because we were often in the same place at the same time in a tightly constricted bubble, right? We were inside that bubble together. So, and he and I early on in our careers, we did a scene in a UCLA student film together. It was Robin, George Wallace, and me. And the scene was some student filmmaker was saying it was 3 young expectant fathers in a maternity ward waiting room, waiting for news of their children being born. And what the performance riff was, he'd put the camera on each one of us, and we would then have to ad-lib our feelings about being a father, a new father, for a first-time father. So they go to Robin first, and Robin, again, knee-jerks into Shakespeare, and it says, child, fruit of my loins, and he goes on shit like that. And he's very funny, and it's hysterical. And then he goes to George Wallace, and George gets up on this riff about, I'm gonna have a kid. I don't have a job. I don't have any money. I'm gonna have a kid. I got a dick though. That's what got me the kid, but I don't have a dime. Why don't you have a dime? Right? And he goes off and he's like frantic for like a minute and a half. And all while this is going on, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I got nothing. I got nothing. I'm about to really fucking embarrass myself, right? So he finishes with George, and then the camera turns to me, and I just sit there, and I think I stroked my chin or something, and I looked at Robin, and I said, "Not quite the mellow Othello, eh, my lord?" And it was referring to George, right? And Robin thought that was just hysterical. The director liked it, and that was, I think, my bona fides with Robin.
You two could have had your own little Monty Python, I think.
But he was a really good guy. I was deeply, and still am deeply, affected by his passing. But in a non-morbid way, I can say that knowing the guy I knew, if he had a disease like that, like the two couldn't coexist together. And I think, I sadly think that last TV show that he did, what was it called, The Crazy Ones or something?
Mm-hmm.
I personally think that was a huge mistake. I think that added to his depression, because it was him starring in a TV show, and it had exactly the opposite reaction that he remembered, that his emotional memory was familiar with. I think that I knew somebody who was working on the show as a stand-in, and I used to hear shit. I think it was a mistake. I think they wrote him the wrong way. I think they wanted I think they were expecting a version of Mork, of who Robin was when he was 28 years old. And I think it was just the wrong thing.
The last movie I got to watch of him where he truly was in that character, looked like he was having fun, was Father of the Year that he did for Bob Goldthwait.
Mm.
And him and Bob Goldthwait were like,
yeah, they're good friends. Yeah,
yeah. I still remember I was on staff duty, which staff duty is in the military is 24-hour battalion guard, where you're just sitting at a desk for 24 hours. And I remember it coming over the news, and Robin Williams was my all-time favorite actor.
He's the purest, he's the purest natural performer I've ever seen in my life. He's at his natural state when he's performing, and when he's not performing, he's in the space in between when he's going to be performing again.
Yeah, he's like the only dude I've ever read about that got kicked out of Juilliard, not because he was doing bad. It was because, according to legend, the professor said they couldn't teach him anything because he had already mastered everything.
It's not so much that he'd mastered it; it's just who he was. He was that guy. I ran into him one day on the lot at Paramount, right? And he said to me, "You're going to the Improv tonight?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You want to have dinner?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I said, "All right, I'm leaving here," and we made arrangements. And he said, "Well," I said, "We'll see you there like at 7:30." So I get there early, like 7 o'clock or something. I have a drink, I'm sitting there, and he comes in pretty much on time, and we sit down at a table. So we talked about the day. He had conversation about his rehearsal, and I think I was working on Brady Brides or something. We talked about that, and waitress took our orders, and then the crowd for the night started to trickle in. Robin saw somebody he wanted to talk to, and he said, "I'll be right back." I said, "Yeah, I'm sure you will." And he leaves. I never saw him again. Okay, like I never saw him again. Like, I mean, I saw him, but that was that. He would buy. So, food came. His food sat on the table, never touched. I ate. He's buzzing around the room. So then, when it came time to get the check, I said to the waitress, "Give me the check." And she said, "No, Robin took care of it." And so there you go. So
Well, I'm sitting here looking at all your writing credits. Speaking of
Mark, with
Robert
the
Williams,
sure, go ahead.
Go ahead, man.
Everything's
I'm
like
sorry.
breaking up here. I don't even know if I'm being heard.
You're heard.
Oh, no. I was going to ask Mark. It's like, because he mentioned his book that he was writing and everything. Is there like one main story in it that's like the most like heartfelt story that you can find, like that you've written into there, like the biggest one in there that affected you, besides you saying that it started with what your father had made the promise of and everything? Is there something else in the book that really gets you emotional, like over that one passage?
Well, I just started writing, so what I've done is I've taken it and let me see if I can answer your question by getting to the answer. I think that in the book, what I'm doing is I've structured it so that because of the title, those 7 years, so each year is a heading. It's like let's just think it's a part of the book, right? And in that year are chapters that make it up. So because I'm concentrating on those 7 years, but at the same time I have to define the characters, I'm jumping back and forth in time at times. I think that the story of how it's a fictionalized version, so it's not I'm not using my names or anything. I fictionalized the characters. So it's a story. There's how this kid,
understandable.
How this kid goes to live with his father in 1957, right? At a time when custody of children was only given to single male parents if the mother was dead, right? or in jail. This was a highly unusual thing. But what happened was, my mother, the truth is the same as the book. When I was 8, my mother remarried, and she married a doctor, surgeon, and they decided he took a position. We were living in Pittsburgh. He took a position and in Louisiana at a clinic to become the head ophthalmologist at a clinic down there. And they're moving to Louisiana. So one day, this is exactly how it happened. One day, I was the kid who had a Superman lunchbox, and I was kind of happy-go-lucky. My routine every day was come home, change my clothes, my school clothes into my play clothes, and instead of going out to play, I'd get in front of the TV and start watching Three Stooges episodes. This was my thing, and we lived in a house that my grandfather bought for my mother after my parents' divorce, and there was this long stairs to go up to it. So every day I would take my Superman lunchbox and I would run up the stairs like Superman was taking off and flying. So I do this. I walk into my house, and the housekeeper, a large, stout African-American woman, Mrs. King, think Mike Tyson with tits, right? Said to me, "Mother wants to talk to you." And I said, "What?" And she said, "I don't know, but it's important. She and the doctor are sitting in the living room. They want to talk to you." So I said, "Fuck, what did I do?" Right? I'm 10, 8 years old. So I walk in, and they're all they're dressed up, like they've been someplace. and my mother said to me, listen, we have some news. I said, okay. And she says, Jerry has taken a job as a head ophthalmologist at a clinic in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So we're going to be moving to Louisiana. So I said, we're moving to Louisiana? And my mother said, no, we're moving to Louisiana. You're staying here. And I said, here? Like in this house? And she said, no, you idiot. And then she turns to her husband and she says, I can't believe I gave birth to this kid. So anyway, I said, what's going on here? And she said, you're going to live with your father. Now that was great because I love, my father was like nonstop fun. And I said, okay. And she said, now go pack your bags. You're leaving tonight. And I said, I'm what? I said, so like my life in one day, like unexpectedly got ripped up, right? Not that I cared. That's the funny thing. Like I was okay with it because my dad, like I said, was like nonstop fun. And I went to live with him and he didn't even have his own place. He was living with his parents, my grandparents. So I think that the turning point the main turning point in my life was going to live with my father. Because had I stayed with my mother, I don't know how I would have grown up. Like my father was such a huge influence on me because he was a guy who came out of World War II. He was a ranger, an Army Ranger captain who was a hand-to-hand combat instructor at Fort Benning, Georgia, and came out and went into business with his uncle, and they opened a nightclub where, it was like a big major entertainment nightclub in Pittsburgh. So he knew a lot of stars and actors and nightclub performers. And I met them when I was a kid. My dad was like a modern day Damon Runyon character. He was, like I said, he was silk mohair, custom made silk mohair suits and, a big Cadillac driving. And he evolved into that. And his embrace of the out of the boxness of the world or what could be, his embrace of, what is doesn't necessarily have to only be what is. Like you can think outside the lines. His embrace of that is what served as the foundation for me, thinking that I could have a dream and make that dream come true.
That was unique for that time period because most fathers from back in that time period, they never fall outside the box. It was you went to school, and when you got out of school, you just found something that you were good at, and that's what you worked at until the day you died.
Yeah. See, my dad had a theory which I passed on to my children, which they embraced also, and that is that if you find something in life that makes money that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Like I've worked, but it really wasn't work. It was fun. Making shit fun. Writing is fun. Producing stuff is fun. Doing stand-up is above fun. It's like beyond fun. So that was advice from my dad, is to just find something that you love. And my youngest son, all three of my children embrace that, but my youngest son is the most profound exemplar of that. He's a chef, a graduate of Culinary Institute of America, and has worked only in Michelin-starred restaurants. And now he has his own little business as a fine dining private chef in Los Angeles, and gets paid like a shitload amount of money. So yeah, I've been lucky. You see, I've just been lucky that I've been able to follow that. It's at every time in my life when I needed things to happen to continue the chain of luck that I've had. It's like crossing a raging creek, and suddenly every time you need to take a step, a stone appears. So that's pretty much what it's been like. Like just how I got into the Comedy Store, right? How I get into the Comedy Store. My name's been on the wall for over 40 years. I'm one of the original paid regulars I'm part of the class of 1977. And I got in there because I sold that script. I told you, right? I sold the script and came to LA, had William Morris as an agent. And one day I'm in a meeting with them and they say, well, what else do you want to do? And I said, well, I did a bunch of stand-up back in New York. And I told them about working with London Lee and the Catskills and the Copa. And I said, oh, we'll get you into the Comedy Store. So Mitzi wouldn't give me a time spot, a regular time spot initially, right? She didn't want to do that because she didn't know who I was. And that was fine. I completely understood that. So, but she did say to William Morris, I'll give him a definite time on a Monday night, on potluck night, right? So I had some material prepared and I decided to go hang out at the Comedy Store and see what it was like there. So I go there. And I told them who I was and I'm going to be performing, and they let me in. And, so I went there for about a week. The first night I was there, I caught Steve Bluestein and Tim Thomerson on the same show, and I shit my fucking pants. I said, oh man, this fucking Catskill Mountain material that I have is not going to work here. This isn't I know enough I've been on stage enough times to know, I know this. I can read this audience and I'm telling you, it ain't going to happen. So during the core week, I saw Paul Mooney and I saw Pryor and I saw Gabe Kaplan and I saw who I ended up working for a long time, writing material for. I saw a bunch of Jimmy Walker and I said, oh shit, I'm fucked. So I started writing again, right? So I wrote a whole new 5 minutes. And I thought to myself, yeah, this is going to be okay. So I do the first night. And it does fine, kind of bumpy in a couple of places, but totally acceptable. My experience on stage is what carried me through, right? Like I wasn't intimidated and I was fine. So then I did some rewriting. And in the course of me being there, I hung out at the store almost every night. I wanted to really catch it. So I kind of put myself in Mitzi's eye line, never say anything to her, but put myself in her eye line. So at some point she began to look at me with recognition, right? She looked at me as if she knew me, right? Then I started to say hello. It was gradual, and this is my father teaching me how to do this, right? In my head, it was gradual. So I go the second Monday night, same time, I do it, and the material is incrementally better. So I take another week. I'm coming back next week. I punch it up, and I think I have it now where it's pretty good. So I go to the third night of potluck, third week in a row. Mitzi happens to be in the audience. She's there to showcase somebody else. You know who I'm talking about, Mitzi Shore, right? I'm not.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
She founded the Comedy Store.
Right. Okay. So she's in the audience to see somebody else. So I had a good time spot that night. I'm going to say like 10:15 prime. The three comedians in front of me all did great, which is what you want as a comedian. You want the people in front of you to do really well so that, you don't have to pull the audience out of the cellar and then entertain them. So yeah. I go on stage and I squeeze every fucking laugh out of that 5 minutes of material. It was just dirt. It was sand when I finished. There was nothing left. And I walked off to huge applause. And I saw Mitzi in her booth looking at the audience and looking at the stage. And I figured, yeah, fuck it. I got nothing to lose. So I walk up to her and I say, hey, Mitzi, does it have to get better than this? And she looked at me and she said, all right, Mark, call in for spots. And the next day I called in for spots and that was it. It was off and running. So I get a spot the next week on a Tuesday night, early spot, because that's what she does to, when you're new, she puts you on early. And I'm a little nervous. I got to tell you, I remember because this is real. This is like real shit. This is not, this is not club date shit. This is, and I respected the reality of it. And that kind of deep respect I had for the reality was causing me to be nervous. So I got there early. I'm standing in the back of the parking lot smoking a joint. And I look towards sunset and I see George Miller come walking down the back walkway. You guys know who George Miller was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So at some point he stops and he sees me and he makes a beeline to me. And he comes over and he says, "Is that pot? Is that pot?" He said, "Hi, I'm George. I'm George. Can I have a hit?" Yeah. I said, "Sure." So I hand the joint. He said, "You a comedian?" I said, "Yes, I am. Tonight's my first night." So, "Oh, you do great. You're going to do great. It's a great room. It's a great room. You do great. You have this pot all the time?" I said, "I do, actually." He said, "Ah, we're going to be good friends. Good friends, you and me. It's really good." So we finished the joint. She said, "Come on, I'll take you in." So finish the joint, walk in the back door. And as we walk in the back door, George glances to the parking spaces to the right. He sees an old beat up pickup truck with Indiana license plates on it. He said, "Oh, my friend Dave's here. Come on, meet my friend Dave. He's a weatherman. Can you believe it? A weatherman. No one wants to be a comedian, but he's pretty good." So, and I walk in, and I meet David Letterman the first night I'm there. So yeah, it's a fucking amazing, man. That thing, that time. I talked to Mark. You mentioned Mark Summers a couple of times. He and I are like best friends, right? So we talk about that a lot, about just the fucking luck of us being there at that time, right? It's just that unbelievable time in comedy in the United States.
Didn't know he was a stand-up comedian. He was part of my childhood. I mean, I grew up with Double Dare, for God's sake. And
yeah, he and I are going to the Comedy Store 50th anniversary. I says is next month, April 7th, and he are actually going to go. We're going together.
So, I'm glad to hear that he's back on his feet. I heard he had some health issues not that
long
ago
okay.
or something.
Yeah, he's
that
good.
happened. But yeah, it blew me away that he was a stand-up. I was like, Double Dare guy was a stand-up comedian. I just couldn't picture it.
It was like, it was just an amazing time, man. It's just, you know, I learned two things within a couple of weeks of being there at the Comedy Store. First and foremost, it was going to be very good for my career. Like, I could just tell. I knew it. I just knew I was in the right place at the right time, and it was going to be very good for my career. And number two, I was never, ever, ever going to have to go to a singles bar the rest of my life. All I had to do was be up on that stage. That's it. I just had to be up on that stage, because comedians, like, I learned, and I didn't learn this in New York. It was a different vibe. Out here, I learned that comedians, much like rock stars, had groupies. That there were comedy groupies, the same they were musical groupies, and equally accommodating.
I was going to make a pun and say that's kind of funny, but
yeah, no, it is. You're right. So what comedians would do, you know, at least for me, is that you see a table full of women, young girls, and they're out for the night, right? If anyone there seems to, you know, to spark your interest, you do your setups to the audience, and then you drop the punchline to the girl. And if she's interested, right, she'll start watching you. So one night I'm on stage, I do this, and then I do like I do the qualifying test, right? I move left, and her eyes move left. I move right, and her eyes move, right? I do this, she does this. I see it, right? And but I'm doing my act at the same time. But you know, I know where my priorities are, so I'm concentrating on her. So sure enough, after the show, she's back. I don't even have to look for her. She's back in the back of the room. So I knock at the puddle, and I say, "Come on, my house is about 2 minutes from here by car. Let's go." So jump in my car. We go back to my house, and you know, another skirmish in the sexual revolution transpires, and we're it pays to be a writer. Sitting in my bed, and she said to me, I think I should tell you that I'm seeing another comedian. And I said, hey, look, this is the first time we're together. No one's making any long-term plans. As long as there are no diseases involved, I'm not bothered by that. And she said, well, don't you want to know who it is? I said, no, not really. Like I said, unless
it's George Miller.
No. She said to me, well, it's David Letterman. And I said, She said, well, don't you have anything to say about that? I said, yes, I do, as a matter of fact. I admire your range. Now, to be fair, I never said to David, are you fucking this girl named Nancy? But, I did see the two of them together there, talking. So, who knows? Yeah. I'm actually, if I see him on next month, I'm going to ask him about that. I'm going to tell him.
Seeing a pattern here. Nancy's in Hollywood and sex stories.
Well, you got to look at it like this, Mark. The statute,
remember that. Trust me.
The statute of limitations is kind of ran out on that one, so don't worry about it now.
I'm not worried about it. Trust me.
So, guys, if you aren't paying attention, I hope you were taking notes on that, because that is part of the Marc Sheffler pyramid of success.
Unbelievable, isn't it? Should we discuss that?
I was thinking it's like it should be a dating show. It's like giving advice.
That's what the Marc Sheffler pyramid of success is.
Yeah. And again, I only speak for myself, but I am successful, and I did follow these 3 points of the pyramid. I left college. I had 3 life goals, just 3. 3 life goals. I wanted to smoke as much weed as possible. I wanted to sleep with as many different women as possible. And I wanted to make just enough money to afford the weed and the women. And as I said pre-show, I look back on my life with a grin on my face and realize, because I have greatly exceeded my own expectations. So anytime in life when you can exceed your own expectations, you are by definition successful.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the Marc Sheffler pyramid of success.
I don't know how you go wrong with that. I really don't, because it's just one is comforting. The second one is comforting, and the third one is the comfort.
Yep.
All very comforting.
All very comforting.
Act now for $19.95 plus shipping and handling. You can get one piece of paper with a pyramid on it with those 3 things.
It's amazing how far a person can go in life with just the proper attitude.
Yeah.
You don't really need to have anything but that, and you can go pretty far.
I completely agree. Stay positive and
yeah. You just
have fun and enjoy the journey. Just have fun and enjoy it.
That's what it is. That's the truth. Because if you aim yourself towards your goal and you keep taking steps, small steps, eventually you get there. Eventually you get there. And again, it really is the journey. Like, I look back, writing the book, I look back and remember I had so much fun. It's just been fucking amazing that I did this shit. That it's all real. It's all part of it. And I'm nothing special. I'm just somebody who decided, I want to do this.
But just reading about you selling a script on your first try was amazing, because that in theory never happens. That's a rare thing.
Here's how that happened. I'll tell you. We still have time to tell you that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So Last House on the Left comes out, and I go through that thing where I'm back. Like I said, one I didn't tell you was back in Pittsburgh when I went to do that thing. There were girls from my high school graduating class who a scant 3 years earlier wouldn't give me the time of day. Suddenly I'm on every, local TV show, and I'm all over the newspaper, and they're willing to give me a lot more than just the time of day, which I accepted graciously, I must say. So I remember saying to myself during one such moment, yeah, I picked the right career. This is it, the right career choice here. So you just kind of, well, I was telling a story. I lost my train of thought for a second.
About your writing. Yeah,
Oh,
you
yeah.
had girls that were...
I got a bunch of things going. So anyway, so Last House comes out, and it has those ancillary benefits. But like all films, it takes a dip, right? So it goes away, and now I'm back to being, Mark the out of work actor. I'm no longer one of the stars of a top 10 movie. I'm Mark the out of work actor, and I'm back doing auditions. And it's just boring. All the women, the whole women thing kind of, came and went and disappeared. And I'm back to being Mark the out of work actor. So one night I'm at a party, and I see a guy, kind of looks like me, talking to some girl who's totally gorgeous, model type. And I get close, and I see she's like hypnotized by him. And he's saying things like, yes, I'm working on a first draft right now. I've got the first act blocked out, and I'm doing some character study because I have a main character going to appear at the beginning of the second act. And this girl is wrapped up like a Christmas gift, and they leave together. And I thought to myself, fuck, I can do that. I can tell girls I'm a writer. So I went out and I bought a whole bunch of books on screenwriting and playwriting. I read them, and I developed, this rap using all these buzzwords. So I'm going along, and it's doing fine. And I find myself at an audition for a commercial at a place called N. Lee Lacy and Associates. N. Lee Lacy is the commercial director who directed the famous Mean Joe Green commercial.
Oh, the old Coca-Cola one from back in the day.
Yes. He won a Clio for that. He's a very, very famous commercial director. And I had done a commercial for him before, and we kind of sparked a, friendship. So we were pals. So I'm in his office in the waiting room, and I'm doing this rap about my writing thing to some girl, actress there, and she's enthralled. And I feel a tap on my shoulder, and it's turned around, and it's Lee. And he said, hey, listen, I really want to see that script when you're finished. I said, well, he said, no, look, man, I got an agent in LA dying to see shit. I got an office there. Give me that script when you're finished, and let me see what I can do with it. So I take him aside, and I say, Lee, I'm not really writing anything. I just do this for girls. It's just a way to get girls. That's all. And he looks at me, and he says, does it work? And I said, oh, yeah, all the time. And he said, you're an idiot, man. He said, write something for real. If you can get girls to take their pants off just by things you're saying, maybe you can make some money and have a career by things you put that shit down on paper. So finish this script, whatever it is, and give it to me, and I'll give it to my agent. So sure enough, I finish it. I give it to him. He sends it to his agent at William Morris in LA. And about 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from him saying, hey, you're moving to California. I said, what? He said, well, you're moving to California if you want to. We sold your script to NBC. I said, get the fuck out of here. He said, nope. He said, when do you want to go? I said, I don't know. How about day after tomorrow? He said, done. So he arranged everything. I moved to LA. And the day, like I said, the day I landed, sold a script, car, apartment, money in the bank, and an agent.
The myth.
It's amazing, though.
Yeah.
It's like the feeling and everything that you probably had, like when everything, like when they called you and stuff like that, that comes over you, that excitement, that like your dreams are coming true.
Yeah, I was kind of impressed with myself, but not stupidly so. Like, it was just fun. It one of the things I realized when I got to LA was, and I started, especially when I hung out at the Comedy Store and the Improv, that I hung out quite frequently. If you were like me, if a person was like me, like Robin, like Letterman, like Leno, like George, finally you were in a place that you didn't have to explain yourself to anyone. You know, like you weren't a weird guy. You couldn't be too weird. Like nothing. There were no boundaries. You just couldn't be strange enough that someone in that environment would say, "Oh, watch out, that person's really strange." You just couldn't. So I'm humble and grateful that I was there. That, you know,
I still get told that all the time, that I'm super strange, but that's, you know, it's okay.
I was about to say, it's like, oh, I wouldn't have made it.
yeah.
Even my coworkers at my normie job, they go, John, you have a strange sense of humor. It's funny, but it's kind of strange. I was like, I don't know. It just,
That just means you're living in the wrong place. No, I mean it. You laugh all you want. It means you're living in the wrong place.
And my mom would always complain. She would tell me, she's like, your sense of humor is way too dark. She's like, you think mean things like it's funny. And she's like, it's not funny. And I'm like, well, it's like, I'm like, I think it is.
Like the other day, I was watching this horror movie, and just the way that they did the whole special effect, I about pissed all over myself laughing, because this woman goes running towards her boyfriend, and then all of a sudden she just steps on a landmine and fucking explodes. But the way that they did it, it was just fucking hilarious, and I could not stop laughing. And some of my friends are looking at me like, dude, that's morbid as fuck. I was like, look, man, I'm not laughing that the person died. I'm laughing at how they pulled off the effect.
They did it. Right. Because then you have to remind them, you do realize it's just a movie.
Yeah, that's fake.
It's not real. That person didn't discombobulate. They are actually back together.
Yeah, that was fake. I mean, you guys didn't really kill Marie in that movie when she was out in the middle of the swamp.
You got up out of that water and had lunch.
Did you get to keep that necklace though after the?
No, that's hers. Maybe she kept it.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if maybe I was a keepsake you got to take with you when you left that movie set.
No, I took away the experience, which I've said a zillion times that I learned the fundamentals of filmmaking, of everything I know today, the fundamentals on that shoot. I mean, we all learned stuff. The only person who knew stuff was Freddie. Freddie knew everything because Freddie had directed a whole bunch of porn movies, and you know, the subject matter may be different, but the process is fundamentally the same.
Yeah.
So he knew. It was Freddie who did a lot of the blocking. You know, Freddie's the unsung hero of Last House. He had a lot more to do with it, the final product, from the production side, as far as you know, him knowing how to do things than anyone else, and you know, then he got credit for it. So you know, I want to make that public acknowledgement again, because he deserves it.
Yeah, and this year marks the 50th anniversary of that film.
Go figure, right? Seriously. And you know, it's unfucking believable that 50 years later, people still want to talk to me about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I've watched a remake, and
I was about to bring that up. The remake, yeah.
The remake's good,
but
the remake don't have that shock value to me that original did. That original, you could tell, though it looks tame to us in 2022, but you can clearly tell for 1970s, that movie was like people coming out of the theater going, "Holy fuck, how did they get away with making that?"
The difference. I wrote a piece for a magazine in Great Britain a while ago about the remake. I did a comparison. You can find it online. Cine XS. I did a compare and contrast, right, on the two films. I'm not a big fan of remakes.
Me either.
Right? I'm just not. You know, I don't. Sequels are okay, or prequels are okay, but remakes, I don't know. You know, you don't hear like Moby Dick 2022, right? So, but one of the things about a story like this, about the story that we did, which, that West adapted from The Virgin Spring, was the fact that our cast was populated by unknowns was an underlying support of the premise that these are really bad people. Nobody, you see Brad Pitt and Benjamin Button and you say, well, that's Brad Pitt and Benjamin Button. You see him in that Trojan War. Well, that's, Brad Pitt on a condom label. Then you see him, you got to listen closely. Yeah. You got you see this, you see that. But with us, nobody knew who we were. So we could have been those people. And Wes shot it sort of like a documentary, right? And if it wasn't for Marty and Sheriff doing that, interlude every now and then, it might have been shot in black and white, and a little grainier. It could have been a documentary. So,
and the thing I liked about your character was, yeah, you were a bad guy, but at the same time, you had some sympathy for Junior because he was being exploited by his family because of his addiction issues.
Correct.
So
I was the moral conscience of the bad guys.
Yep.
Right. But I don't know, man. It's just, again, I became a very tiny part of American film history, being in that movie, because Last House is part of American film history, and I'm a small part of that. And
you're a big part of television history, though. Love Boat, Harry and the Hendersons, Who's the Boss?
Yeah. So that's fun. That's kind of a tickle when I think about it. Yeah, it is.
That was weird, John.
Yeah,
it's like, I want to tickle you, Mark.
Look, I have this picture that needs to be reframed, right? So you can see it, right?
Oh my God. Happy Days reunion.
That's the Happy Days. That's a set shot from the Happy Days. And I look at that picture every now and then, and I say, yeah, I was there. It was me. I did that. I did that.
And there was a lot of heavyweights in that picture. Ron Howard.
I see Ronnie every now and then, and we say hi, and I see Henry every now and then, and we say hi. And, I see everybody else, and whoever's still alive, I run in and we say hi. Yeah, I did that. That was fun.
And I like the fact that Ron Howard's daughter, and now she's becoming an accomplished director.
Ronnie's a terrific guy. Ronnie and Henry are both just terrific guys. I mean, their friendship. When I'll tell you a little bit of trivia about that show. So the whole Jump the Shark episode, right?
Yeah, when Fonz jumped the shark.
So they filmed that. They filmed that, I think, in Santa Monica. And that was a single camera shoot, unlike the way the series evolved as a multi-camera. So what happened was when the show premiered, it was originally for Ronnie. It was originally his show. It was originally going to be the story of Richie Cunningham, right? So the show's on for a few weeks, and they're doing this show on. They're doing this set down in Santa Monica, filming that show, and all this fan mail that came in was for the Fonz. Like, Henry was getting like 1,000 letters that every two that Richie was getting. That Ronnie was getting, something like that. That may not be the exact number, but that's the idea. And those two guys went on a walk on the beach and just said, we're friends. And however this shakes out, whoever becomes the star of the show becomes the star of the show. And we're just going to be friends. And we're going to do what Gary says. And that's that. And those two guys are their friendship, their bond is just amazing. They're just, because they're so, I know it sounds weird of me to say that because it's like smoke blowing, but Ronnie Howard and Henry Winkler are just really nice human beings who have very special jobs. They're just regular nice guys. Same as Mark Summers, the same thing. just nice guys who have regular jobs. Every now and then, Summers and I have a conversation about, we have the change, didn't change conversation. Like people we've known who got really successful, who changed and who didn't change. And we know the truth. Like we know who did and who didn't. So we revisit that every now and then. So, but Ronnie and Henry are two guys who are definitely in the didn't change category.
Well, the Fonz was a hero of mine when I was a little boy because I used to, I'm not going to lie, when I had hair, I used to slick it back. I used to piss my grandparents off because I would walk up to the TV and go, "Hey," and then try to hit the TV to make it go off or come on. And my grandfather would be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And just, I'd put on a jacket and try to do the whole thing.
The Fonz didn't have the leather jacket in the pilot.
No.
He had a windbreaker.
I forget what kind of jacket I had on. It might have been a members only, one of them 80s jackets.
Yeah. Let's take the collar off. They'll buy this shit.
Yeah.
To own it.
I can relate. When I was little, I wanted to be Indiana Jones, so that was my thing.
I grew up with that old TV because my grandfather, man, it was, we watched everything. He was he's the reason why I became such an addict for movies and television. Because I got brought up on Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, Three Stooges, Little Rascals. I know it's taboo and probably wrong to even admit, but the old Amos and Andy, yes, we had that too.
You know what? I don't make apologies for my 15-year-old self.
Yeah.
Right. If I was doing that weird shit like that today, then I got an issue. But I don't make apologies for my 15-year-old self because it was my 15-year-old self.
Yep. And that, but then I had Happy Days. Three's Company was my show. I love that freaking show. And
I have a comedian friend, African American guy, Brad Sanders, who lives in Atlanta now. Brad was one of us. He was part of the class of '77 crew. And every time he calls me on the phone, he repeats a joke that I used to do in my stand-up act that's completely and utterly repulsive today. And he does it every time we're on the phone. We're like every time, and he slips it in like when I least expect it. And I said, Brad, I can't do that. You couldn't do that joke today. He said, "No, but you did it then." he said, "And you were on the edge of the diving board then doing that joke." So, and I'm not going to.
He has to keep reminding you of it or something.
And I actually said to him, "Why do you just repeat this joke every time we talk?" He said, "Because it just makes me tickle to remind you of just how fucking crazy you were." And I said, "Yeah, well, my wife reminds me of that every day." So
I remember one Saturday morning I turned on CBS television because I loved Saturday morning cartoons. And I remember Richard Pryor in Pryor's Place comes on CBS. He had his own children's show, for God's sake. And I remember my grandfather goes, Is that Richard Pryor? How the hell did he get a children's show? And I'm like, who's Richard Pryor? Because I was kind of kept away from that stuff. My grandparents were very much, Bible thumpers to a degree. And, but it just blew my grandfather away that Richard Pryor was on Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
He's like one of the raunchiest
I don't
people
remember
on
anything
earth.
like that.
Yeah, he did. He had a show called Pryor's Place.
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
I knew Richard casually. I'd met him a few times, but Paul Mooney, who worked with Richard, he and I were pals.
Paul Mooney was underrated as hell. He was. That guy was.
Paul Mooney, when I first got to the store and started working there, numerous people said to me, "Listen, don't go near Paul Mooney. Don't bother him. Don't say hello to him. Don't just stay out. Just stay away from him. He doesn't like white people. He's mean, and he and Mitzi are real close. But I said, well, you know, she's white. He said, yeah, but she owns the club. So just stay away from him. Just don't go near him. So me being who I am, you know, I'm a East Coast street kid. So, you know, folding is not in my DNA, right? So I made it a point now, you know, where I might not have earlier, that every time I crossed Mooney's path, I would say, good evening, Paul. Hello, Mooney. How are you, sir? Hello. And Paul he had this way of looking at you like, get the fuck away from me. Who are you to talk to me? Right? And it'd be like that, right? So, but I didn't break it. I didn't bait on it, man. No, I didn't bite once yet. Hello, Paul. How are you? Nice to see you. And this went on for like, I don't know, maybe a month, 2 months. That's all I did. And I'd walk away. I didn't wait for him to respond. I just get that look, that fucking snake side-eye look. So one night I was on stage in the original room, and I did a set, and it was pretty good, you know, worked. And I walk off stage, and there's Mooney standing at the back of the room with his hat, you know, like this, kind of looking at me like this. So I walked by him, and I knew that he'd watch me. I knew it. I walked by him, and I said, hello, Paul. He looked at me, and he said, well, well, well. Another funny little Jew. Ain't that just what Hollywood needs? And he turned and walked away from me, and I laughed my ass off. And then after that, we became, you know, friends. We became very friendly. We became, you know, friends. But he was a fucking force on stage, man. To watch him, you know, take an audience that like a late night. Mitzi always used to put him on late, like 12:30. To watch him just challenge an audience to you know, are you who you are, motherfucker? Are you who you think you are? Who are you? I'm telling you who I am. Who are you? I mean, just, man, he was a good guy too. And he didn't really hate white people. That I found out.
No, I think Dave Chappelle, because I followed that Chappelle show when he kind of gave Paul Mooney, you know, a rub in that, which I thought was awesome. He said that about Paul. He said Paul was one of them guys you had to earn his respect.
Fuck, I told you, yeah.
He wasn't just going to hand it to you.
You had to earn the privilege of him just saying hello to you or acknowledging your existence, right? You know, that's the truth. But he was again, how lucky I was to have known him, and to not only have known him, but to have been, you know, a peer of his, right? That's the thing. Like when I think about all of the people who I was an actual peer of, you know, did shows with them, worked with them both at the store, and then sometimes, you know, let me show you. I keep this as a memento. I got a residual recently for something that I did way back, but if you can see it, you see what it says?
$261. Paul Brownstein Productions. Hey, Marc Sheffler, Robin Williams.
So I keep these little mementos of work that I have done in the past handy because it's a nice reminder for me that
I do the same thing. My closet's full of autograph shit and stuff, and my son comes over. He's like, "Don't you ever put clothes in there?" I was like, "No, I put all my mementos in there."
things that are really important, you know. So you know, all in all, you know, and I'm still working. I still have a couple of things, and I do my stand up every now and then when I'm in town. But you know, we're leaving on the 5th, June 5th, to go to Colombia. My wife's Colombian, so we're leaving on the 5th to go to Colombia for 10 weeks. Prior to the pandemic, we were spending about 4 months a year there. So I'd come back here and write a little bit, and then do some stand up, and then I'd go back, and I don't know, just kind of meandering right now. But I am writing the book, so.
And you said before we started recording about the 50th anniversary of the Comedy Store.
Oh yeah. Next April 7th, there's a party at the Comedy Store that is the 50th anniversary of the store party, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some old friends and having a good time. It should be, like I said, Summers and I are going together. We're going to hook up here, and I mean, I'm in Indio now, but we're going to hook up in LA.
Yeah, I got vacation coming up next month, and I've been wanting to go out to Cali because I want to go out to Sunset Strip, and everybody's like, man, Sunset Strip, there's nothing there anymore. I was like, yeah, but I still want to go to the Whiskey. I want to go to the Comedy Store. I wanted to go to
the Comedy Store's still there. The Improv's still there. The Whiskey's still there.
So there's still stuff to do there. Yeah, it's not 1980s glam metal scene that it was back then, but it's still stuff there to see.
There's plenty to see. Really. You're coming for a couple of days, 3 days. It's plenty.
I want to go to the Rainbow because I want to see where the Lemmy Kilmister tribute that they have there for him, and
I spend a lot of time at the Rainbow.
Does the same guy still own it, or did he end up finally selling it?
I'm not sure. I'm kind of out of it.
He had a really bad bout with cancer, and I didn't know if he kept it or ended up having to sell it or not.
I live such a boring existence compared to the way I used to live. Yeah, but it's okay. I work on my golf game, and
Me and Luke have been talking about taking up golf, Mandy.
It's great. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, I can hit the ball. It's just my slice. I've got to get my slice under control. The rest of my game's fine. It's just that drive. I cannot get that slice.
Well, there are fixes for that. Check out, look up a golf teacher who puts lessons online by the name of Todd Kolb, Kolb, and he advocates a different kind of a swing. Instead, he advocates a more vertical swing plane, and it's a lot easier to do. And that's what I changed my swing around to do that, and it's helped quite a bit.
And one of the guys at a driving range told me one time, he says, you're forcing it. You're not being fluid with your swing. You're trying to force where you're trying to aim it.
You're trying to hit the ball instead of swing the club. And
yeah.
That's the difference. That's what you got to learn. You got to change your mindset. You got to not think about hitting the ball. You got to think about just putting the ball in the right position and then swinging the club, and it'll do the rest.
Yeah, he was like, there's no problem when you hit it. He's like, you hit it clean every time. He's like, but you do that Jackie Mason Caddyshack 2 slice where it almost wants to boomerang back at
you. Well, that's because the simple reason for that is that when you come through the ball, your hands are coming through first. So if you realize what that does, by doing this, it opens the club face, right? And that puts left to right spin on the ball, and that sends it to the right. That's like
I sent one into the highway one time. I was like, oh shit, I just caused an accident. It's time to leave. Because I was so scared. I was like, oh God.
Yeah, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the game. I used to hang out occasionally on the PGA Tour because a good friend of mine was a big star on the PGA Tour back in the day. And I used to go and like hook up with him and walk tournaments. So I kind of learned I learned how the pros look at the game. And
I'm not going to lie. I used to hate golf, and then I went out and played it. And though I sucked, the guys that I went out with, just the camaraderie and just bullshit all day, that to me was like some of the most fun I had had.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I'll tell you some of a fascinating equation about golf. How long does it take you to play a round of golf, would you say?
I think it took us, I think we were like 3 hours.
Okay. So let's just say 3 hours. Do you know how long it takes you to swing the club?
Normally not too long.
Well, how long would you say? The time the ball is set up.
Maybe about a minute, 2 minutes.
No, doesn't take you that long. Takes you about 4 seconds to swing the club. The time you take the club back, so you go through the ball, takes about 4 or 5 seconds tops. Okay. How many holes in golf?
18.
Okay. What's your score?
I think the last time I think I was like 23 over par.
Give me the number. What was that, like 100?
Something like that.
Okay, let's say it's 100, right? Okay, 100 times 4 seconds is how many seconds?
400?
How many seconds in a minute?
60.
So how many minutes is that you're actually hitting the ball? 3 minutes and 40 seconds. The rest of the time, and what are you doing for the 3 hours minus the 3 minutes and 40 seconds? That's the equation about golf. It takes 3.5 to 4 hours to do, but you're only actually playing the game about 4 minutes.
The rest of the time we're just bullshitting and having fun.
The time you're just interacting with your surroundings.
Yep.
Fascinating. I went to Scotland in 1995. My friend was playing in the Open Championship, so I went to hang out with him in St. Andrews, and I got a chance to see the birthplace of golf and to walk, many rounds on that golf course, and it was just mystical. It was just fucking mystical to be in this little seaside Scottish town with all this shit going on. It was just mystical.
I keep telling myself I want to go out to and watch the Masters at least once.
Yeah, hardest ticket in sports to get. Like literally the hardest ticket in sports to get.
Yeah, I heard it's pretty expensive. So I was like, well,
it's expensive. It's just the cost is the secondary issue to it being the hardest. It's just they're impossible to get. You have to know somebody you actually have to know somebody to get one. You can't just, as a member of the public, I think that they are so unavailable.
Yeah, I know they tell me like, you can just go like, different events. They have a bunch out in California and different things like that. And I think might have one here in Hawaii. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Pro-Am, isn't it?
There was I think the United Airlines tournament. There's one that happens out there, but you should definitely, if you like the game, you should try to catch a pro tournament in person.
Well, that's what them guys at the driving range was telling me. You go out to a tournament. They said you'd learn more just watching these guys than what you.
That's exactly right. I probably walked, a couple of 100 rounds of tournaments in my life with a pro, like sometimes inside the ropes, sometimes outside the ropes. And I learned more watching him and other players. Like I'd watch him. He'd be playing in a foursome with him, Freddie Couples, Davis Love, Andrew McGee, Peter Jacobson. I saw Tiger when he was 16 years old tee off at Riviera, first time ever playing in a PGA tournament. And I was standing like about 20 feet away from him on the first tee. And I will tell you that when that kid hit the ball, it made a noise that in all my experience watching the PGA and being on tour and listening to it, never heard a sound like that in my life.
They say his son is no slouch either. Tiger's son.
Right here. Yeah.
That's scary that Tiger's now got his kid that's going to come in and maybe dominate everybody.
Yeah, but it's sad what happened to him or what he did to himself, but he's still probably the greatest golfer in the history of the game.
Sometimes I think Tiger got too much put on him, and sometimes the stress got to him. And we're only human, and I mean, people like ESPN, they like to drag him through the dirt, but it's like, well, last year you all were praising him as god of sports, and now this year you're just dragging him down. I'm like, well, I get it. That's the nature of media. They'll love you one day and hate you the next. They'll vilify you.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you don't realize the pressure Tiger's had put on him since he was a kid. The kind of pressure that only LeBron James could probably say that he's had.
Yeah, it's a lot of, and I'll tell you that having been on stage in front of lots of people and then watching pro golfers who there's a lot more pressure on those golfers. That's just,
Yeah, he came into the sport of everybody saying, he's going to be the one that takes down Palmer and Nicholson and all of them as the greats. I mean, he literally walks into that. It was so.
But to watch him play in person was quite a thrill. I've seen him several times in person. Quite a thrill.
I used to like watching John Daly, and it was because scientifically he should have never been able to have been as good as he was because his diet was shit. Everything he did was shit, but somehow
the year I went to St. Andrews is the year John Daly won the British Open when he beat Costantino Rocca in a playoff. And I watched that playoff. I watched the final round, and I was sipping single malt scotch on the balcony of the Old Course Hotel that where the 17th hole that runs right by it. And I watched the whole thing play out right from there.
But Mandy, you've never seen John Daly, I'm sure, but this guy would literally walk up to putt and would have a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And
I've seen John Daly quite a bit.
Well, I'm talking about Mandy. I don't think she's ever seen him, but he was a goddamn force of nature is all I can say. He was Happy Gilmore before Happy Gilmore. He just wasn't as violent.
I was about to say, that's my extent of my knowledge with golf is the actual movie.
He was Gilmore. Like Happy Gilmore minus beating the shit out of like Bob Barker and different people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm glad Daly's doing good now. They said that
he's ill.
He had cancer here recently.
I said cancer, I think I heard.
And they say his son is good too. And it's like, well, I hope his son doesn't go the route that his dad, because I still think John Daly could have been one of the greatest golfers to have ever played if he could have exercised his demons a little bit.
Yeah, well, that would go for a lot of people, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, Tiger was unable to exercise some of his demons, and yet Tiger
still had his success, though. Let
me tell you, Tiger Woods hits a golf ball. Like I said earlier, it makes a noise that just I still haven't heard, even with all these big hitters, these powerful hitters.
It almost sounds like when a batter in a baseball game hits a baseball. It's kind of similar.
Yeah. When it hits, when it clears the upper deck. Yeah. It makes a noise, but you hardly even hear it. You hardly even hear it.
Yeah. And if you can outdrive your opponent and get it on the green, you're going to 9 times out of 10 beat your opponent.
Well, my pal tells me that always said that all the money on the PGA Tour was made from 150 yards and in. Said that's where the money is made. He said a lot of long hitters get to that point and fucking fall apart because their short games aren't good.
Well, Tiger was the complete package, but his back, that's where his troubles began, I think, with the painkiller issues, was just his back going out on him.
I think his troubles began when he started cheating on his wife. That's where his troubles began.
Yeah, that too. And he was married.
I know about that part.
Yeah.
He was married to a drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah, she was a nanny. She was Jesper Parnevik's nanny. That's how he met. That's how they met. Yeah.
Yeah, he weren't dating no dogs.
No. But you see, the interesting thing is that there are certain kind of karmic rules in life, and if you break them, you may get away with it for a while, but ultimately they're going to get you.
Yep.
That was one of them. You don't cheat on your spouse. You don't want to be married, get unmarried, but don't cheat on your spouse, because then you start laying subterfuge, and it's going to blow up at some point. At some point, it all blows up. So,
yeah. I mean, if you don't want to be married, have some balls and just tell your significant other that maybe you two need to go about your.
Yeah, right. Get unmarried if that's what you want to do. But to do the other thing is
cowardly.
Not
To
cool.
me.
It's just not cool. It's just weird.
Yep, and you're never going to come out of it. You might initially come out of it playing the victim at some point, but at the end of it all, it's going to catch up to you. Truth always comes out. My father still says this. He says, whatever was done in the dark will always come to light.
Yeah, that's true. Makes a lot of sense.
He's 70 years old himself, and he still says that.
The older you get, hopefully you get a little wiser, and
yeah,
probably not true in my case.
My dad says that too. He goes, shit, I'm been on this earth for damn near 7 decades now. He's like, and I don't know if I've gotten any wiser. He goes, I've just learned a lot of shit I ain't going to do again. He said, but
yeah. I sometimes look at myself in the mirror and just, I have like a brief non-psychotic conversation with myself. Well, it could tend to like go into that direction very quickly. But one of the things I realized is that I'm not very mature, right? I'm 72 years old, but I'm really not all that mature. And I came to that conclusion when I was 65. I looked at myself in the mirror on my birthday and I said, oh, this is it. Like, I'm not going to get any more mature. And I know what goes on in my head, and they're not the thoughts of a mature man. So this is it. This is literally it. And it's I don't know. I take very few things seriously. I mean, relationships and life and death things, yeah, but I don't let anything bother me for the most part.
I've been told that. They were like, I've had family members tell me, they were like, John, you're 45. Well, I'm 46 now, but back when I was like 44, 45, they're like, you're in your 40s now. When you ever going to grow up? And I just always tell them, I'm always going to be a Toys R Us kid. That's me.
I would say that on a weekly basis, at least 10 times my wife will look at me and say, you're such a child. So immature. I go, yeah, okay. And she would say, even that's immature. And I say, yeah. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to tell you. This is it. It's not getting any better. I'm not going to flip a switch and suddenly turn into like the most mature man on the planet. It's just not going to happen.
What was it that me and you got on the subject of yesterday, Mandy? Like, we got done talking to our guest yesterday, and me and her got on the subject of porn stars that get trains ran on them for some reason. We just went off into that. Oh. And then when we get done, and when me and her get done,
I was talking about this lady who like told her story in the break room at my one of my last jobs. It's like I'm sitting there with her. It's like somebody I helped get a job, and she goes, yeah. She's like, when I was in college, she goes, I always had the train ran on me, and I'm like sitting there looking around like my workplace, like, oh my god, it's like you can't say that here. It's like somebody is going to hear you. It's like that's not what you say at work.
And when we end the broadcast, me and her sitting there talking, and the whole time I'm in my head, I'm like, we are not mature at all. We literally went from talking to our guests to talking about people who have had sexual exploits with numerous gentlemen in one night. What the fuck?
It's just sometimes there's just stories that people tell you that you can't get out of your head, that you just have to share.
Well, you're right. I define myself as immature because still the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life was when I was in summer camp when I was about 11 and I saw a kid light a fart. I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen then, but I was only 11. Now I'm 72 and I still think to myself, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. A fucking blue flame shoot out of someone's ass. I think of it now and I remember with great fondness that
great fondness.
There's no, you are not normal unless you think farts are funny. Because to me, farts are fucking hilarious. I'm sorry, that shit.
I don't think it's so funny. But it's like men and children because my 9-year-old daughter is obsessed with this. I like she goes and puts on YouTube and it's just all fart noises and she's sitting there laughing her ass off, listening to every single different fart noise. She thought it
I
was the
watched,
most
Wait,
I,
my
I
first
watched
wife.
a farting
hilarious
preacher.
to her.
I watched a farting preacher all the time, and that shit's.
When my daughter was about 8 years old, she came to me and she said, "Dad, I'm really worried about Mom." My first wife, right? So I'm really worried about her. I said, "Why?" And she said, "She can't fart." I said, "What?"
What?
Yeah, she told me she doesn't fart. I said, you think about that. Just draw back from whatever you're feeling and get into the logic of it. I said, "Does she eat?" "Well, yeah." He said, "Honey, if she eats, she farts." She said, "But she said she doesn't." I said, "Because she doesn't want you to know she farts." Like, trust me, I sleep with her. She farts. So, but my second wife, she actually broke the ice one night when we first got together. And, you know, she's like the coolest woman I've ever known in my life. So it makes sense that she would do that, you know. But yeah, but the most, I saw that kid light a fart and stuck a match on his ass and said, "Hey, watch this." Oh, fuck. And I'm too chicken to do it. I would never do it, right? You know, like, I see it like going up into my colon and blowing myself up and whatever. How do you explain that to your parents? Did your son have a nice time at summer camp? Except for the fact that he blew up lighting a fart. He was fine, right? So I don't know, but this kid, I saw it and I said to myself, that's the coolest thing. And now, after everything I've seen in my life, which has been a number of things, I go back to that. And I said, wow, I peaked at like 11.
That was your moon landing.
11. It never got any better. Right? It just didn't. I remember the color of blue it was, man, and it was like for a fucking nanosecond. And I keep looking for a shirt in that same color to remind me of it, but I can't find it.
I think the pyramid needs to change a little bit there because you have to include that in somewhere.
Yeah, but you're not going to get any women if you like farts.
It's like you're not going to enjoy your life ever if you haven't seen somebody light a fart.
Well, wait a second. I'm not saying you can. Obviously, you can enjoy your life. However, you will enjoy it a whole lot more if you get to see that. And you'll have a greater respect
for sprinkles.
You'll have a greater respect for farts. You'll say to yourself, "Wow,
respect." No,
I'm a rocket. I'm a rocket."
I saw some kid do it on YouTube, and he lit his jogging pants on fire.
I mean, I'm so chicken, I could never do it.
And his friend comes over and starts stomping him in the crotch, trying to put the fire out.
I have two older brothers, so they always, them and their friends would experiment with that stuff. Well, my one brother definitely.
These are people who have IQs with minus signs in front of them. They can get away with this shit, right?
It's like, don't you? And it's the truth. You could literally have that fire back up into your colon, and you will fucking explode.
Yes, yes, exactly. There's no fucking way I would ever do that. But I'll watch someone do it.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like, but he'll definitely watch somebody.
I'll watch someone do it from a distance. You know,
there's some flammable shit, no pun intended, up in your body.
Oh, of course.
I mean, that's like going to the gas station and lighting the end of the fuel pump hose, That's
right. Yeah, so I say nay to that and yay to the other part.
Weed women and money for the weed and women.
Money for yeah, and everything. If those are the three main umbrellas, everything I do falls underneath at least one of them. Sometimes there's a Venn diagram where they'll fall differently, but
there needs to be a chapter in your book about the lighting of that fart at summer camp.
Oh yeah, I go back and forth in time, absolutely. Because we're all, if you think about it, if you think about it, if you take out the minutia of our lives, right? We all go from a momentous occasion to momentous occasion, right? They're all in every one of our lives. There are these moments that take us to the next part of our life, and what I'm writing is about those occasions in my life. I'm using those as the anchor points, and because there's a lot of insignificant shit that goes on in our lives too, right? So nobody wants to read about that because it's insignificant and uninteresting. So, but if you concentrate on the momentous occasions, the things that you can remember that say, wow, when this happened next, or this happened because this happened, like my father telling me not to go to LA when I wanted to go to LA. Him saying, not yet. Him and me having enough trust in him to not rebel against what he said and do what I wanted to do, but realize that this was a guy who had done a lot of shit in his life, and he was giving me some very solid advice. So
yep, that Catskills detour put you on the.
That's what did it. That's what set everything up.
God darn damn cat trying to pull my headset off my head.
They'll do that.
Yeah, because the wire, I guess, is wiggling and it's enticing her, so she's like popping at it and shit.
Mine keeps pulling my backdrop. It's like it keeps wiggling because Lucifer is back here just messing with the whole entire thing.
Well, I'm gonna have to get on my day.
All right, Mark. It's been a true honor and a pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Always
I know
fun.
you told me not to call you sir. You said your dad was sir on our phone conversation, but it has been an honor and a pleasure, sir.
Okay,
so.
Mandy, you too. Great.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Mark.
Oh,
it's been great.
It's
been
an honor. You guys, and you can make a show out of it, or a couple of shows out of it. It's okay. All right, have a good one, you guys.
You too. Right. And anytime you ever want to come back, just let us know.
I appreciate that.
Take care.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye. Awesome dude. Something about the Nancys, though. There's something about them Nancys.
I know. That's what I was like. I was making like a point. I was like, Nancy's, Hollywood, and sex stories. It's like, now I want to like find every Nancy that we can.
Nancy Ritter, you got some explaining to do there, sis.
Jax is going crazy. I don't know if anybody's knocking or something. I can't hear it.
Was that you knocking?
Okay. Yeah, that was me.
Okay.
Was it impressive? Want me to do it again?
Yes.
No, that was awesome though. He's a really cool guy. I enjoyed that.
My magic keyboard. Or that's what I think my keyboard died. Oh well, whatever. I can still talk. Fuck it.
And then everything slowly else like starts dying. The mic just goes. The computer just goes.
The mic will be fine because it's all plugged into the wall. But Apple, these things, love your computer, but this is trash.
Oh, all my stuff is wired.
This thing does not last at all. It's
the wireless stuff doesn't really do too well with working and everything. So
might have to go to Best Buy today and get a wired keyboard.
Hold on.
Okay. Do. Well,
I don't know what that was and who it was, but I think I got to get going, John. I'm sorry.
Well, no problem. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us, and want to say thanks to our wonderful guest, Mr. Marc Sheffler. Mark, It was a true honor and a pleasure to meet you. And we'll be back next weekend. I got some guests coming up next weekend. I don't have the schedule, so I can't quite tell you who they are at the moment, but I'll update you later. So everybody, it's been John, wonderful Mandy Cantone.
Bye, everybody.
And we'll see you again next time on Behind the Fiends. Ew, ew, ew.